The boy stood in the corner of the classroom, clutching his book tightly as the other children laughed. Every time he tried to speak, the words twisted, tangled, and refused to come out. His name was Joe Biden, and he carried a burden most people couldn't see. He stuttered, and for a child, that felt like a prison. The teachers didn't help. Some even mocked him, calling him names that cut deeper than knives. His classmates turned his pain into entertainment, laughing whenever his words got stuck. To them, he was the boy who couldn't talk right. But inside Joe, there was a fire, a stubborn refusal to let the world decide who he was going to be. At night, when the house was quiet, young Joe would stand in front of the mirror. He would stare at his reflection, forcing himself to recite lines of Shakespeare and poetry. He fought with every syllable, as though each word was an enemy to be conquered. The boy who stuttered practiced until his lips bled with determination. On bus rides, he whispered lines of poems again and again, training his tongue, commanding his voice to obey him. It wasn't an overnight victory. There were days he wanted to give up, nights when he thought he'd never escape the laughter of others. But something inside him refused to surrender. He kept fighting, believing that if he could master his voice, he could master his future. Years passed, and the boy became a man. The stutter that once haunted him grew weaker, not because it vanished, but because Joe learned to rise above it. He discovered rhythm in his words, strength in his pauses, and courage in his presence. The same child who once lowered his head in shame now stood taller, ready to face the world that doubted him. Imagine the scene years later. The same man who was once ridiculed stood before thousands, his voice steady, his words carrying the weight of hope and determination. That boy who was told he'd never be able to speak without shame was now delivering speeches as a United States Senator, and eventually as the President of the United States. Every word he spoke on those grand stages carried the echo of his struggle. Behind the applause, there was the memory of a child staring at a mirror, pushing through the pain, refusing to let his weakness define him. Joe Biden's story wasn't just about politics or power, it was about resilience. About a boy who fought his own voice and found a way to turn it into strength. And perhaps that's what makes his journey so extraordinary. Because when Joe Biden speaks today, he doesn't just speak as a politician. He speaks as the boy who was laughed at, the boy who fought in silence, the boy who refused to give up until his voice became strong enough to lead a nation.
Whose inspiring story of politician would you like to hear next? Tell us in the comments below.